The podcast you have been waiting for.
6 friends, 6 opinions, infinite laughs.
You're watching history in the making.
You don't have to open up your eyes, you can clearly see.
The #1 podcast is GCU Week. 20 years of brotherhood. The Q La Familia. Raw, uncut, uncensored, and unfiltered. Bub's opinionated. Why Eddie keep you laughing? Steve will get the tea while Shot tells us all what's happening. Spiritual or natural. I'm here for the thrills. And when it comes to PJ, y'all, please say the real. From quick hits, heavy lifting, dumbass to the week. We getting ratings through the roof every time that we speak. PA, VA, GA to the Aspens, turning podcasts into under-table has-been. Sports, entertainment, and current events. Sometimes we get pissed, so the crew got a vent. So when Friday night come, you know just what to do. Sit back, put up your feet, and now rocking with the Q. What's really good, people? Did somebody say it's Friday? It's your boy Boog, straight out the 804, and you are now rocking with the Q on the one and only GQ podcast. That's GCUE, not to be affiliated with the magazine and the company. Now, before I get into the introductions, I want to send a shout out to Eddie, Steve, and the real PJ. Now, we're going to set it off up in the 717 with Bob. Let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? If it's your first time with us, we welcome you. If it's not, we welcome you back. Either way, we hope you sit back, learn some while you enjoy this great show.
Now we're going to keep it up that way. Now we're going to go to one of the queens, Mo. Some know her as Monisa. We know her as, I'm not going to say that nickname live on the air, but you know what it is. Let's go, Mo. Give me an introduction.
I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. Shout out to Smith University. It's homecoming season. I didn't go.
What?
Black voting, so I'm gonna keep it black today.
That JCSU love.
Now we're gonna go down to Mr. Suave magazine himself. We're gonna set the tone for the night. None other than Shad. Let's go.
See, my JCSU hoodies at the crib. You know, not gonna do it yet. It's a bad week in North Carolina right now. The A&T mess is going on.
Oh, it's G-Ho, huh?
It is. I didn't want to say ho on air because, you know, I don't want nobody confusing anything.
Oh,
but, yeah. So,
What's up?
all right. So, if y'all read the banner, y'all know we're talking about voting while black tonight. Basically, there's a lot happening with this election season. It's only about 2 weeks left before final voting day. So a lot of debates have been going on, a lot of commercials, a lot of speculation, a lot of rumor, a lot of all that stuff. So we can try to basically see where we're at as black people. 3 black dudes, black woman.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like how it's just kind of see how we feel, how I think we're all in necessarily different demographics for the most part. Bubs in Pennsylvania, Boogs in Virginia. I'm here in Georgia. So we're experiencing things in a different way. We have some different perspectives on some different laws. So definitely want to see how y'all are feeling. So just to jump into it, at this point, you know what I mean, being in our 40s at this point, I'm gonna claim it because I'll be 41. So I'm inside now.
Not yet.
You almost so being in our 40s, most of us, we voted for probably the last 20 plus years. Do you feel like voting matters at this point? Do you feel like it makes a difference when you go and vote?
Who wants to jump in? I got a lot to say, so I don't want to go first.
Voting matters. Follow up.
You're going in and out, Mo.
Hear me?
Yeah.
We go. That's better. Yeah.
Voting matters, but follow up matters. Voting never not.
You're going in and out.
You're still going in and out.
Your phone's far away from you.
Yeah, it is somewhat far away from me. How about now?
Yeah, you clear.
Yep.
Okay, so voting matters, follow-up matters, but voting has always mattered. I think we Because I think somewhat our age group has gotten comfortable in just saying, because the older people have always taken care of it, and now things are falling on us that I think we're just in some way not necessarily learning about, but understanding the gravity of it. And also, we're at a time where we've been around long enough to experience being and being somewhat frustrated with the system. Because right now, like, I'm not gonna lie, everything I'm voting for is a matter of just not like it's just not letting democracy go away. So I think now more than ever it matters. But I understand people's frustration with everything.
Who want to go next?
I mean, I'll answer it. I'm a little more simplified with it. Yeah, it matters. It matters because on every level, like, you have to be aware of your environment. So there's a national level, state level, and a local level. I also have children. It matters. Like if you understand basic rules of government, all three of those levels apply to you in some way. Though you may think they don't, they always do. So of course it matters. And it's a lazy way to say, like, nah, it doesn't matter because, you don't see something change instantly. But that's because you've not taken the proper steps into knowing every level that's applied to knowing, every level which applies to getting the progress that you need. So yes, it matters.
I'm gonna go ahead and say voting definitely matters. It always mattered, even though it was a time when we weren't able to vote. But voting definitely matters. But at the same time, I'll get into that later on. Voting matters. To answer your question, I do agree.
So I'm a big voter, so I make sure I go all the time. But I know I've encountered people who feel like, for what? Even if you're counting the vote and a person wins or a person loses, it's like, what changed? And I think that what I find is that I don't think people fully understand the political system. And it's not necessarily you vote today and then your change is tomorrow. It's like you vote today and then this person you voted for pushed some legislation, and then the next person pushed some more legislation, and the next person pushed some more legislation, and then 10 years down the line, it's like, oh shit, we slaves again. But it's like, it's a matter of understanding a lot of things. So that's what I'm saying. It's a lot to get into, but voting absolutely matters. But when feeling like knowing voting matters, are we rigged? Is the system against Black people? Because that's a big thing that's always talked about during election time. You want our vote, but you're not doing nothing for us. You come here in November and then you go on in December and we don't see you until the next election. So it's like, is it a system that really just takes us for the vote and not for the action afterwards? And like Mo said, it's a lot about the follow-up as well on our part. Like, are we doing enough to make sure that it's not rigged against us? Are we fighting discrimination?
I think in some instances, and I can only speak for some, I don't know if we truly understand, or we're taught, or we really try to take the time to understand that the follow-up, like you were saying, the follow-up is key. It's not just voting for president in, it's your senators, your local representatives, and these are the people you want in place, which I think that we're new to this. Like you said, we just were recently able to vote. And when I say recent, it's
only 60 years.
Right. So though I think we had to start really applying ourselves to start understanding what we're really dealing with. And I think, and I'm not in favor of us, just I think we, in some cases, we just
He's breaking up. You're breaking up.
Breaking up.
Yeah.
Okay. I just, yeah, there's a lot more to being taught for how far we have to really dig into to get these things pushed forward.
I also I listen to always listen to Sirius Radio in the evening. I listen to Karen Hunt always talking about voting. The lady, remember her last. One of the things we talked about was lobbying, and you know we protest. We have a celebrity like Ice Cube who wakes up one day is like I'm speak for all the black people, but we don't have. The question was, what lobbying groups do you have specifically? Like, we have organizations who work for black people, but activists. But what lobbying groups? Who's taking the money, but giving it to corporations or organizations or these politicians and saying, "Hey, we gonna get these people to vote for you, but this is what we need done." And I think that's a matter of you're never going to have it. Any group, you're never going to have everybody on board. But I think it's getting a bottom line understanding of what is urgent in the black community across the board, no matter what the socioeconomics are, no matter where you're at regionally. Like education for me are two of the big things because those direct. When I think about education, I don't have.
I think
kids.
your phone is her phone. I can't hear you. Is it going out?
Yeah, partially, but you still going out somewhere.
Okay, so when it comes to education, even though I don't have kids, I know that the kids in my community and the type of education they're getting, the opportunities they're getting, affects the community because they're at band practice versus out here vandalizing someone's home. That affects the conditions and the quality of your community. So even though, because I think a lot of times, especially when I don't have kids, I don't got to worry about that, but you should. When you think about what monies are allocated. For example, one of the things that came during COVID is, internet should be free or heavily discounted because all of these kids needed internet and because they had no choice but to work from home. And I work for an online school. So when I think about things like, it's a snow day, maybe these kids don't have to do a snow day because they can work from home. No, it's not going to be what it is in the classroom, or whether it's their homework and just watching a video or additional resources. So to me, I think sometimes we have to get out of the mindset of, well, I don't got to worry about that. That's not me. Because if that's the case, I think especially like particularly like me and you, Shad, there's a lot of shit we ain't got to worry about then.
Period.
Now y'all
a whole lot of shit you don't got to worry about.
Now y'all say who's lobbying? Like, do you mean as a collective or do you mean in selective areas? Like, do different states have different groups? Because I believe
I don't think it's different states. I think it's issue wide. So
but see, that's the thing. 2019, when they started the National Black Professional Lobbyists Association, right? The point of that was to foster environments that encourage dialogue and collaboration with legislative staff, elected officials, corporate entities, all that stuff.
Right.
But have you heard of anything? Now they supposedly have meetings and events and groups and things that they go to. Like, this is national, but have you heard of it? You see what I'm saying?
I think this is. I think that's the issue with our community. There's 17 million different organizations doing 10 million things. So it's like a lot of them are doing the same thing. Nobody knows who this person is. Nobody knows who that person is. My question always comes down to who's funding what? Who are you going to? What are you paying for?
Because sometimes you're real, and it's like, and also who's rolling the wheel? Because
who say you speak for me?
Right,
which is true.
For me, I think professional experience is serious. Like, I don't necessarily like one of the things people always say. Well, like when Trump was elected, well, he's a businessman. I don't want a businessman as a president because presidency is about public service. It's about serving a broad variety of community. Business is about
which is where he failed.
Right.
He failed in the area of talking to people and being culturally aware of other people and understanding you can't go to this country and touch this person. You can't go over here and kiss this woman on the cheek. You can't be like, what he said about Haiti. You know what I mean? It's like you call Haiti a shithole country. Like that's
Right.
insulting, not just
But
to
look,
Haitians, but then it's like every black person watching it. We're like, bro, the
but you know
hell?
what? He
That you
But
ain't say
my
that about Yugoslavia.
he lacked
It's
but
just
my
like it's
he
but
lacked
my thing
empathy
what it
towards
was
a lot of things. He lacked empathy towards a lot of things.
yeah,
But
but
far as
the thing
it's not even
go ahead,
go
say
ahead.
empathy.
your piece.
That's
Go
not.
ahead,
I
say
don't even
your
think that's
piece. Go ahead.
empathy. I think he lacked
No,
cultural
I'm gonna
sensitivity.
finish what I'm saying. Go ahead, Buck. Get it off.
My
Go ahead.
my thing is though is like for us as blacks, like, and that's like our target, prime objective, what we're trying to speak on right now, men, women, in general, like 60
And that's what I was
years.
going to.
Do
Yeah.
we really like to most one point like should that be something that we need to get taught? Is it more that like how do we get us to understand where we need to go in this voting process other than just these people come around every some odd years. It's time to go to the ballot. You know what I mean? And let me
I
listen to what
think.
they got to tell us. Like, how do we get things going in the right direction the same way the Republicans do?
Let
Like,
me go
okay,
first.
so we got Biden in, so now they're like, okay, cool. So we're going to make sure that we have money, people in place to target, to flip things today. How do we get ourselves? Even though, like you said, Mo, like everybody's not going to always be on the same page, but how do we get people to understand that we have to get a majority going in the right direction in order to get some of these things accomplished, and it has to be consistent in order for it to work out in the long run.
So I think that political science classes need to be taught in high school, so that when you turn 18, you understand what's happening. Because most people, you turn 18, you just go vote. You don't understand the policies of what you're voting for. You don't understand who runs what, which is why a lot of people think that, oh, my life is so horrible, it's Biden's fault. Biden don't got shit to do with half of the stuff you're going through. Like a lot of stuff that happens in our everyday lives start at the local levels. It's starting with city council. It starts with the mayor. It goes to state legislators. Then it goes to the governor. Like those are people that run your everyday life. The stuff Biden does is like
Signing.
countrywide policy. Like it's figuring out how do I deal with this situation over in South Korea? How do I deal with our relationship with this Russian dilemma and this debacle that's going on in Iran? How do I deal with that? His job is not to govern cities. He has no jurisdiction in cities. So it's like until we really understand that, we're upset and we're voting at and against the wrong things. And there's people coming through like city commissioners and like city councils and state legislators and people that are running like state senate houses. We don't even know who these people are. And these are people that are voting to change laws that are dictating our everyday life. So we have to have like a policy and political science class at an earlier stage instead of getting into our adulthood and then figuring it out from where we're at, and stop listening to rappers.
But you got to take consideration that a lot of people didn't. They're not going to take the time to do that if it's not taught to them single-handedly.
Nah, but that's the problem. You're not gonna. But it's another. I think it goes to another thing. We have to get involved in these offices. So if you're in
Early.
the school board, like if your
Right.
parents are running the school board, no, you're going to teach our kids about this. If you don't like it, leave.
But see,
And
that's the problem. You're going, and you know what? That's what I was going to get into earlier. It's going to always be static. It's going to always be. Now, whether it's good from coming from your side or whether it's coming from the opposite side, it's going to always be static. It's going to always be opposition. And I think it's to the point to where a lot of people have dwindled hope, honestly. It's like, what's the point in voting when this was just as bad as that one? Or in some people's minds, majority of people's minds, and it's sad to say, but it's true. What I'm voting for the lesser of the evils, that's
Yes.
basically all I'm doing.
Yes.
No,
yes.
but
And
the
that's
thing
what
is-
it's come
No.
to, though.
But no,
But my
you're
thing is-
always voting for the lesser of the two evils.
And that's what it comes to.
But like to their point earlier, that's the key thing. The problem is you're always going to have resistance. Anything in life has some resistance where you're trying to go in a different direction. But
Right.
where we're failing is that we're not collectively understanding, like you said, the poverty issues starts on so many different levels that you got to start putting so many people in place that are in your direction to where you want to go. So how do we get majority of the people like us who want to go in this different direction to get to that direction and understand it is more than just the federal level. It's more than just maybe a state level that, like you said, even the school boards, like you said, like the thing is that that's a key thing that y'all brought up too. Like we all went to Harrisburg schools. We all feel some way about that our school isn't as dominant as it is. and we're truly a reflection of it. So
Right.
though it may have been considered some type of way, as you see, we're still all productive, members of society, families, things like that. But at this point, we had to start really tuckering down to figure out a true strategy on how we're going to start doing our school boards, our city councils. That starts first, because once they start seeing the prominence there, then that's where the money starts coming, and that's where people start wanting to do things, and that's where people take, you know what I mean? So like, how do we get our people, we're not talking about people, our people, to really get into this? Like, that's where it starts, where that we really get it. Like, you know what I mean? So
I think the community effort of getting people to understand what they need to know, and specifically, I know specifically with schools, like we've had a lot of trainings at my job, and when it comes to parent involvement is getting the parents to understand what they need to know so that they can help their kids, and understanding how it helps their kids. And that can be across the board when it comes to your community. For example, a lot of people, I'm always surprised at how many people do not fill out the census. And it's so easy and it is so quick. And people, and until you explain to them that, like, nah, the census ain't them trying to track you. It's deciding, oh, how much money are we going to put in uptown Harrisburg versus midtown Harrisburg that's already gentrifying? Because everybody that's gentrifying midtown is filling that shit out plus some. Whereas the rest of uptown or on the hill or out the south, they're not filling it out, but they probably need those resources more than what they do in midtown. There's no schools in midtown except for the charter schools. They're going to make sure their kids go there, or they homeschool, or they go to private school. Whereas if they're out the south, it's, oh, my kids need these extra dollars for books or after school programs and things like that. So I think part of the responsibility as a community, and I think in where we should maybe be holding our elected officials and their staffs responsible, is getting out just simple information, whether it's bullet points. Like one thing I had to learn to do and we've all had jobs where we've worked with the public. Sometimes you have to oversimplify. And sometimes that's what it comes down to.
Layman's terms.
Getting your community and the severity as simply as possible. And some things aren't that simple. And if they ask, I know for me, I always try to make sure I'm well versed and can explain things multiple ways, because somebody's going to ask questions. But it's just really getting the community to understand the weight of, like Bubba said, local officials, your school board. Like when I think about school board, I think about all these school boards that are banning books. I think about now I know here, our school board is very Black. A lot of our teachers, it's a mixed bag. So it's like, what are they teaching? Are they comfortable with teaching those things? Or what dictates what they teach? Because I think as a community for a while, it was, oh, we're going to do like the suburbs. We're going to do like all the local big districts. But the local districts aren't a predominantly Black student population. So you can still teach them the maths and this and that, but also you can teach them history and incorporate things in people that look like them and apply directly to them.
Which is true. And I want to put one word out there while we're on this subject. And I want to bring up something from the past too. I think where we lack as a whole, I'm going to say perpetuation, keeping things perpetual. And the reason I say that is because if we backtrack and we look at 2007, 2008, let's look at Obama's first campaign run. You had majority of younger people that were excited, that were motivated, that took over to their high schools. They took it to their colleges. You had your neighborhoods and your communities. We could actually have the first Black president. It was an excitement. You see what I mean? They rallied. They were in the streets. And it was young people. It was older people. It was not, and I'm not even just going to say us, but it was majority us. But what I'm saying is this, though. After that, it dwindles. We start things, and we're good at starting things. We're good with coming up with ideas. We're good at starting foundations. We're good at coming up with layouts. We're good at laying blueprints. But perpetuation is where a lot of us as African Americans fall. That's what
But that's my thing. Like that, the consistency is a thing that has to take place. But like to your point, with Black people, like with the Obama thing, just to touch on that quick thing before we move on to something else, like we get caught up sometimes in symbolism so bad. Like it was the idea, and we was caught up in the fact that like we're gonna have a black president. So it's like we don't have to tell him because he's black. No, when are we gonna go do it? To my point, do like just because we have a black person in office, why do we assume that they just automatically know? Do we really vote with intent? Like, do we really give, like, when we start pushing our votes, and I see a lot of people say, well, if you don't do this, I'm not going to vote at all. Like, that ain't it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want to vote, but we want to push a somebody that's for what I'm talking about or what I need. Do we truly vote with any intention other than just to say, I voted for the person that's there?
But I was going to get down to it. Well, my bag, not to cut you. I just want to say this right quick. I was going to get down to that later on in another one of the subjects that we're speaking on tonight. Because not one time, the whole 8 years he ran when he was being voted for, and I asked people, you know how people have conversations about voting, not necessarily who you're voting for, but when it comes to, I'm voting Barack all day. Not one time did I hear anybody ask, what is his opinion on this? What is his opinion on that? How does he feel about this? How does he feel about that? They didn't care. All they saw was black. And that's the problem that continues to go on. You may say, well, he's a Democrat, so I'm going to vote for him simply because he's a Democrat. You don't care about how he feels about abortion, how he feels about this, how he feels about that. And we as a people have got to stop that.
But I think that comes from like.
Hold on, Melissa said what you said. You broke up.
We as a people need to pay attention to primaries, because one of the things that I always see.
Come on.
Joe Biden wasn't. If you would have told me at the beginning of the primaries that Joe Biden was even going to be considered, I would have laughed in your face.
Well, no way. He was last.
Right. I said I would have thought it maybe been Lizzie Warren. I would have thought maybe who was it? Was it Julian Castro that was running?
Mm-hmm.
Or and you know the
Bernie. Bernie's always
always in there.
ARP. But then old reliable Joe came in, and what was it? Clyburn from South Carolina was like him, and instead of people saying instead of people saying, all right, what's he about? It was like, all right, we're gonna go what's comfortable. Now I will say, and people were pissed off with the Democrats from South Carolina. And I said, some of it was just at the time we were dealing with Trump. And when you're dealing with something,
you had to beat one person.
Right. And I said, and a lot of people were like, all right, he was Uncle Joe. He was Obama's bulldog. So I think we went with what's comfortable. But I think if people really paid attention to the primaries and really rallied behind people, we would have had, it would have been a tougher call. So, I don't even think Kamala would have been the nominee.
No, but here's the thing: Trump wouldn't have made it in office if the Democrats wouldn't have kicked Bernie off of the primary. Yep. Bernie had the polls, he had the lead, he had the energy, he had generations of people like rooting for him. There was like. Bernie. Nah, I was a Bernie or bust person, and I was like, you got to vote for somebody.
Well, he had that heart attack too, and that threw it off too, because that ain't what threw it off. That ain't what did it.
But they gonna say
that helped. Nah, because
even
afraid. Now they're trying to drive the narrative with Biden about his thing. Same thing with Fetterman. Like that's the reason they're trying to, because even like. But
this wasn't even like the Republicans. This was the Democratic Party that did that to him.
Oh yeah, they kind of slid him out.
Like they literally, and no shade, Barack was like, "Yo, step aside, let her do this."
Let's talk about this though. One quick point: why did they do that? And I'm gonna be honest with you. Soon as Bernie started talking about free healthcare, free education, you're taking that money. So that affects them Democrats too. So they turned on him. I'm gonna call it what it is. They turned on their own.
But that's the thing. Democrats are heavily paid by the medical industry. We all know this. So their money sits there.
Let's go.
Can we stop going with the political aspect and just say rich people have their hands in everybody? Because Democrats, like you said,
because it's not just rich people.
No, because we get caught up with Democrats and Republicans, and I think that's another thing too. Like I think that's a trick, because you'd be surprised. I'm gonna just say this I'm not gonna say names. Mo, he knows some pretty laid back Republicans that he doesn't even have an idea of that are like, we get so caught up. I'm not gonna say, I'll tell you off the air, right?
Okay.
You know some Republicans for real. You know some Republicans that are cool. But that's the thing. We get so caught up in the idea of a Democrat. Or is that what we're failing to instead of doing knowledge on some of these
the
things?
reason I said Democrat was because his.
No. I'm just saying in general.
I was using that as an example, as his own turning on it.
I mean, when it comes down to it, realistically, all of it's about money, and even even still, but the money on one side is different than the money on the other side. One side is long money, the other side is short money. Democrats are playing with little money. Republicans are playing with energy. They're playing with resources. They're playing with minerals. They're playing with countries.
But some of them are hand in hand. Don't get it mixed up.
Nah, but it's not so much hand in hand. It's like it's Manchin,
also,
for instance.
Republicans have always had a long plan: abortion,
exactly,
segregation. They're gonna hit on gay marriage, and whenever Clarence Thomas does whatever he does, they gonna touch on love.
Affirmative action's gone. And
right,
about to mess with that same-sex marriage. I mean, interracial marriages. You trying to close that out too?
Same sex too.
Yeah, but just because a strategy isn't one that's in your corner doesn't necessarily mean that they always have your best. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes, I'll say this, sometimes you can respect the enemy more, that's flat out direct, more than the enemy that you're choosing to be on the side with. And I don't
think, that's true.
Hold on. Go ahead, Sean.
It's true. You can respect somebody that will tell you the ugly truth to your face, and somebody's going to lie to you behind your back.
Right.
Understood. So it's the reason I don't like Trump, but I can appreciate the fact that he's not going to BS around it. It's like, this is what I don't like you. I don't like them. I don't like y'all. I'm closing all this down. Like, you have to understand, like, again, he's not a politician, so he doesn't know how to maneuver around his lies. I get that. I also get how Democrats know how to word things to make it sound great. I get that as well. But like Mo's saying, when you get to Republicans, they just played a 50-year game in 6 months. And it wasn't like they just came up with this plan and was like, oh, this is what we're going to do. They've mapped this out. And it's like they just pinched away from things. And it's like you go in, like, it's almost like Shawshank Redemption. You go into a little rock stone or a rock hammer and you keep picking away at the wall. Eventually, there's no wall. They pick away at bills to where eventually, when you put the right people in place and they set it up to where you get the right Supreme Court in, they have a majority at this point. The only way you're going to win anything is packing the court. Anything that they want now, they get.
Well, let me ask a question. I'm going to ask everybody here, well as those listening at home. As we just said on here, Republicans had this plan. They mapped out. They did this. Abortion, same-sex marriage, affirmative action, all that's going to go. Now, what have the Democrats planned for the past 50 years?
To block Republicans. That's the only plan they got.
That's the only goal. That's the only thing they can.
I'm saying you spent 4 years. You spent 4 years talking about Trump instead of making a plan on this is how we get away from this. The only person that was.
That's what
I'm saying. Then you get Bernie. Bernie was planning. Bernie was like, "Yo, do this, do this, do this." They were like, "We don't have the money for that." COVID hit. All of a sudden, they found all the money Bernie said they had in the first place. So all the money for free education that you didn't have, all of a sudden you got it. You were able to tax these other people, all of a sudden you got it.
And you know what's funny? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm saying, like, even like these the top companies that is not paying taxes, like, how the hell is that even legal?
Yeah,
how?
But it goes back to education. You know what I mean? Because like you said, again, Bernie was stopped by his own people. That's my point. Like, which are the Democrats, and that's my point. So, not like, again, us knowing that we've always moved the needle, like we've always overcome, we've always moved the needle. How do we educate to understand exactly what we need to move going forward, so Bernie doesn't have this slip up next time? Like,
you gotta also look at it like for real. You gotta like
policy, because we don't policy. we look at we look at the end of the thing that is signed, but we're not looking at the meat of policy. We're not looking at it long term. Like I remember
Exactly.
about the crimes bill. Like there were so many things within the crimes bill that I think, like when it came up about like Joe Biden, I think they questioned Bernie too why he signed the crimes bill, but he said because they had things that they added to the Violence Against Women Act, which is why
There was a lot added inside of it.
right. One of the things added in the crimes bill by Republicans, and one of the things negotiated was, instead of proper sex education, it was abstinence education. That ain't got shit to do with crime. It does, and when you get into rape and coercion and
Right.
things, but that really doesn't have anything to do with it. That's more about education. So I think we also have to teach people how to understand and examine policy. Yes, those bills are this thick. They got people that read them. Again, that goes into us having our elected leaders say, listen, we need you to communicate these things with us. And we can go to them with things too. We should be able to.
Right.
But so is that the reason though that people shut down for voting? Because again, sometimes you have to simplify things for people. And then, like you said, if a representative has an intern who breaks stuff down for them, the common person who's trying to just survive and have a meal doesn't have that type of time. And the thing is that we're the ones that are not benefiting from these things. So, and I don't mean just me, but like,
So
go ahead.
no,
No,
I
but-
think
Go ahead.
I think the problem is, like, yeah, we don't have time to break it down. Like nobody really has time to read a 2,000 page bill that they're passing next week. Like you're not going to get through that. But
Right.
in the same breath, the way that we consume our information is a problem. So if I'm only watching this channel and only watching this perspective, and I'm only watching that channel and watching that perspective, I don't really know what's in this bill. And we're not pushing the media to say we need to know what's going on. Like BET threw away BET News. So the things that were important for Black people, we're not hearing about now. And then you open up BNC and they do more arguing on their channel than they actually do giving information out. So they just going back and forth with each other and no one's getting anywhere. So if we're not making someone give us our resources, we're not getting them. Meanwhile, you get
How,
on Fox
though?
News.
How?
It's you
How
say
do you make them? No.
you say
because
no. I'm
you said
telling you.
BET No,
I'm telling you.
but like real quick, because I'm gonna let you finish because you have a good point. The thing is, like you said, BT News it got thrown away, but it was strategic. Why? Because Viacom bought it. They erased all things that's a key, but that's a behind the scenes money thing.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
but you have to be honest in how Viacom even got BET, because the numbers were going down on certain programming and numbers were going up on other programming. So when you start seeing all the stuff that you're doing that is the meat and bones of the show are missing, and now everybody's going to VH1 and MTV to watch reality television, you're no longer competing with your own audience anymore. So you let it go. And that's why he sold it. He wasn't able to compete with VH1 and MTV any longer.
check us out. They were bought out by Viacom.
Let's not even talk about the WB coming in there and taking all the Black networking shows.
Right. But again, and that's still thing. But the person who purchased it is always was a strategy, though. You know what I mean? And that's like you said, it's a long game.
Yeah.
But at what point do we still have other resources? We have this internet thing right now. You know what I mean? Like, so why can't we go ahead?
So you say whoever's in charge BET, I don't know if it's still Debbie Lee or not.
No,
whoever's in charge at BET, yo, we need real programming. We need real news.
Don't leave TV one out.
I'm saying you got to say we need to have these things. The problem with us as a community of Black folks is that we complain in private and we don't say anything in public. So it's like we don't demand anything from anyone, so we don't get anything. And that's the problem that we continuously have. So it's like, oh, we don't have a news channel. Okay, I'll go watch CNN. And you just let it ride. Like, we don't have resources at this school. I just put my kids in a different school. And then the kids that are stuck in school, they're stuck there.
I think also when it comes to getting our information, we have to be careful who we get.
Right. You know how many people voted for Kanye West for real?
Right. Well, and that's somebody who admittedly doesn't.
Who?
Like, if you tell me,
That's not his name anymore.
oh,
Yeah,
if
we
you
don't
tell
speak
me,
about people on the list. He violated Mo. I just
huh?
wanted to say that.
He's not on the list. That new name that he has, he's the artist formerly known as.
But if you tell me, if you want to be my elected official, but you tell me you don't read, that's like saying, "Yo, I'm gonna hook you up with some fried chicken and not season it." Like, you, I'm immediately going to dismiss you. So I think sometimes when we talk about, when we talk about where we get our information, like, also I think and I think just as a whole in America anyway, we like to be entertained. We want our news to be entertaining, which was
That's the
another
problem.
reason that Trump came in. Like, because it was, that motherfucker was entertaining, although he was also evil, he was racist, he was misogynist, he was all the other is and ogynous. But just being able to extract the information that we need, and being careful as to where we're getting our information from. Because the thing is, with the big news networks, we all know they're owned by larger companies. Even smaller local news networks are bought by larger companies now. So you see the difference in how the news is reported, and the shift in what they're reporting and how they're putting it out there. Even the newspaper, like Penn Live, there's a whole lot of Penn State stuff for us to be 2 hours from State College. Like,
Right.
that's one of the larger universities. When I think about what I hear about, how much I hear about Penn State versus like a Temple, like it's just strange to me, but it's based on who owns it. So I think for us, part of that is, again, also holding those owners accountable, but finding out who's backing them, and politically, what are they about? And so it's a really tedious, thorough vetting process, but it's one of those things that once you get over the hump of all the hard stuff, you have to stay on top of it.
Right.
Because, like, again, there are certain people where I see when somebody's like, yeah, I was watching this podcast on, especially during COVID, I was watching this podcast on YouTube and they said this and that. Between the four motherfuckers they were watching, they ain't even have a high school diploma, but you expect me to take scientific information from them about my health? There are some things that absolutely, I want somebody who did a lot of school, like, and went through the tried and true channels. Now, there's racism in healthcare, which is a whole other topic, but like, I'm not going to go to a teacher for my OBGYN visit.
True.
So let me ask
Right.
you this. So with that being said, Mo, do you think that we're literally, so are we still, now that we could vote for 60 years, the past 60 years, are we a contributing factor to the reason that we're having all these failed policies? Like, how much accountability does the Black community have for these consistent state of affairs that we're in, that we don't want to be in? Because Shad said something real cool. He said, like, we complain in silent, I'm sorry, behind the scenes, but don't, talk in public. So
Right.
us not wanting to vote, how much is it our fault that we don't take care of what we do there and get these things going in the right direction? Like, how much responsibility do we have to do this?
We absolutely have a huge responsibility. I think that's one of those situations where you pare it down to as simple as you can be to get, because one thing I learned when I was working in Medicare is when you have government policy, it gives states the guideline. So that's when you pay attention on a federal level, but then you also have to pay attention to what your states do and how they interpret those policies.
Right.
So nationally, as a group for Black people in America, we could say, hey, we want equal housing practices. When I check that I am a Black person on my housing loan application, my interest rate should be big. I should have the same interest rate as a white person with the same credit score and income that I have.
Right.
Point period. Those are things that nationally, and then when you get into the state level, I shouldn't have an issue getting a home in this development, or being able to get a home loan for me to buy a home, or a home loan to, or whatever funding to repair this older home that I have, because there's supposed to be a special grant for that.
Right.
So that's to the state and local levels. What services do my county have? This is the water source in my county, and I need a special filter to go on to my, whatever water source I have, because historically there's been issues with the water source. So as a whole, we have to understand A, what we want, and B, not get into the thing, well, that's what happens to them down south. That don't happen up here.
It damn sure is happening down here.
Well, and it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it doesn't. I think it's a matter of it's happening or you don't know it's happening. But like Mo said, like even with the census situation, it's like you say, okay, well the census isn't filled out, but my taxes are. You know where people live. Like if you wanted to really justify and say this is where the people are at, you know where they're at because you know where the taxes are coming from. You can just go into the IRS database and figure this out. And it's the same way when they run when they ran the PPP loans. You know who has a business because they filed taxes on their business. So you should have sent a letter out and said, hey, we know that you have this and you've paid this and you've made this. Here's how much you qualify for. Do you want it or no?
But what if I just register my LLC?
That's what I'm saying. But it's like if you say
But let me.
okay.
But before you go too hard into that shot, do you think that Black people are contributing to this failure of repeated behavior by these government officials?
Yes. Absolutely.
Why?
Because we had a generation of my vote doesn't matter. Coming
When
off
was that?
of that was, I would say, like late 70s going into 80s. Like that 80s generation up until 90s when you start seeing like college students like standing up against apartheid, which you see how that worked out. They started shutting down corporations. Like, oh, y'all supporting that? We not supporting y'all. And the Black colleges literally pushed United States businesses into putting their money behind ending apartheid. So from the Black Panther movement up until I would say like the Black Pride early 90s movement of leather African chains and that era. Okay. Between there, it was a vote for what? Because the people that were in the 70s era, you've dealt with Jim Crow, you've dealt with segregation, you've dealt with King, you dealt with seeing all of your Black leaders getting murdered. You dealt with that. You've dealt with the Black Panthers. You saw what the cops did to them. You now inject drugs into our community. You inject guns into our community. I don't have time for this no more. Let me go and make some money and make my family in a better situation so that we can just live and do our thing and get out of all this mess. And then you get to the 90s and it's like, oh, we actually have a voice and we can make these things happen. Then you do that. And at that point now, the money is there as well. So people are like, I'll go there with you, but I'm not about to risk my livelihood. So I might go vote, but I'm not going out here and marching. I ain't about to lose my job. I got a good job. And that gap, that generational gap is a problem. But so now
the policy, we don't always have to march. You
exactly.
Got to behind candidates when it comes to their policy, which is why I always say again, getting into the primaries, showing up at them town halls and be like, and asking asking the questions, because like one of the things that I always see specifically when it comes to the Black community, because it's always, what are you going to do for the Black community? There are no specifics, and
there's
it's
no
always
request or there's no demands.
Reform. I mean, I don't. Not that I don't care about criminal justice reform, because again, that does affect my community, but like that doesn't affect my family as a whole. And so I'm concerned with housing. I'm concerned with education. I'm concerned with quality when it comes to food in my community and water and resource. I'm more concerned about what's going on with the library.
Like, and that was my concern. That was my concern with Black Lives Matter.
Let me get y'all real quick because y'all going into something else we're going to touch back on that we addressed before. But I just want to ask Bugs, did you feel that we're contributing to this deterioration or this not like the progress not being, moving forward, Bugs? Like, how do you stand on this before we get deeper into the next level of just answer what you got for me?
Nah, really. I mean, like Monique and Shai, they basically gave two very true and real standpoints. But I mean, I play advocate for a minute. Are we contributing? This is what I'm looking at. and I'm sure there's a plethora of minds out here like this. Okay, everybody talks about Trump, but when Trump was president, I was getting $1,200 stimulus checks, or I was on. Hold on.
You got one good $1,200 kiss my ass check.
But hold on, no, we had a couple of them. We got a couple of them.
Let him go, Book.
Hold on, we got a couple of them. Stimulus check.
You got a 12. You got like what, 2 6s or something, like 2 4s.
Hold on. Stimulus check was higher, and even the people that was on unemployment was getting 600 and something extra dollars weekly. So hold on for their payments. Now hold on. All this happened when Trump was in office because I'm playing advocate now.
You playing
now?
Advocate.
Listen. Gas was $2.32, and sometimes cheaper than that when Trump was in office.
Hold on.
The whole time.
Let me take my debate notes.
Now, there are people that are going to say, they can say what they want to about President Trump, but Trump been good to me. Biden he did give me $600. Oh, and Trump was even giving out food stamps.
Okay, that goes
per child. Don't forget that.
But that goes into people educating themselves because OPEC determines gas prices. We knew that because let's not forget how gas prices was damn near $5 a gallon after Katrina when Bush was in office. So that's where, again, that's educating yourself policy and following the money trails. Like even now with inflation, everybody's like, oh, it's Biden, it's Biden. I was like, no, it's the corporation. If y'all, I said every other day they're reporting that these corporations are making more money than ever, and they've had all these profits and everything else, and they've raised their prices, but they haven't raised their wages. That's in the corporations. But again, you have to examine who the corporations are donating to, and oftentimes they're donating to Republicans who are anti-labor movements, who are anti all of the things that are progressive.
So wait.
So go ahead, Shaq, because I know you got something to say on some of these points.
Because all right, you go into an election year and you say, oh, the dude that's the president right now, he just sent us a stimulus check. That check wasn't really because he wanted to see us do better. That was so you can like push this money back into these businesses that actually need the money.
That's true.
Like go spend it over there. It ain't because I want to see you do better, because he ain't did shit to make you do better before that happened. Right. And then you go into, oh, while he was the president, gas was this much, gas was that much. That's because we had a surplus of gas. What did he do? He sold the shit to Saudi Arabia. So he let them come in, sold them 22% of our oil stock because we had enough to give away. So now when he leaves, oh, my bad, I brought your car back, but you ain't got no gas left. That's pretty much what he did. Like you take the car on a full tank, bring it back on a quarter, and then say, my bad, and walk away. And then say, oh, that guy's making us fail. And that's like the policies that he had. And I can't knock all of his stuff because he actually did some good stuff. It's just the asshole that it came out of is the problem. Like he did some good things. His issue is whenever he would succeed in something, he would shit on somebody else. So it's oh, I'm winning. Look at those guys. They're trash. And then the people that are saying, oh, we're trash, we're not going to assist you anymore. And it's a back and forth game. So Trump is like, yeah, he's that dude. I have some wishes for him that I won't express on air because I don't want to go to jail. Yeah. But I have some wishes for him.
So how do we go ahead? I'm sorry.
I think what we need to do collectively as Black people is understand politics. Stop listening to dumbass people like T.I. to get information from him. You going to Lil Wayne, getting information from him. Oh, Kodak Black said he voting for Trump, so you know what I mean? He cool, he got swag, I can vote with him. It's like you can't take on. They can't tell you a policy of this dude. All they can say is the benefit that they got from him.
Real quick though, in Kodak Black and Lil Wayne's case, Trump signed an executive to get them off of their they were facing gun charges. So I get it for them. No. What I'm saying is
I understand.
So I get that.
I understand.
So, but
scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Right.
That's his whole campaign. Quid pro quo.
So
the whole time.
So do we So is it more of us learning how to vote with intent, or
No.
is it more us having to figure out how to hold these politicians accountable, or is it hand in hand? Like, what do we do to get this going in the right direction outside of just educating ourselves? And we educate ourselves.
No, I think that's the point. Like, if you're not educated, you don't even know what you just voted for. Like, there's people voting. For instance, Brian Kemp ran for governor down here, beat Stacey Abrams, right? While he was running for governor, he was the Secretary of State in the race that he's running. He took off 305,000 people from the ballots, mostly black people, so that they couldn't vote. So that when you get to the polls, you get turned away. You can't vote. Stacey lost by 52,000, which is why she didn't concede, because she knows what he did. She took him to court about it. The court said he was wrong for what he did, but he's already in office, so there's nothing you can do about it. So she said, okay, I got you. I'm going to add 1.2 million people. And you beat me by 52. There's no way you should win right now. What did they do? Started closing polling stations, started moving polling locations. I went and I voted last week. They made me sign an affidavit saying I requested a mail-in ballot that I never requested, saying the mail-in ballot that I have requested to my house, I have to destroy it. I'm signing an affidavit saying that I'm going to destroy it. I was like, I never asked for this in the first place. But even in that situation, the line I had to wait in 2.5 hours, early voting in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. Like, you're setting up a system to where you're making it destined for people to fail. So it's not just the education part, but you have to know who and what you're voting for. If you don't know who you're voting for, you don't know what they stand for, when they start voting for things later on down the line, because once you vote for me, I don't got to talk to you no more. I can keep making decisions for you until it's time for me to go up for election again. So for 4 years,
how do you hold people accountable for that? Because we have to change that.
That's what I'm saying.
We have to change that.
You have to know who's going in there. White people don't have this. Well, they have this problem, but they don't have this problem, because when people come home, they have to do town halls. We don't show up for town halls. We don't show up for PTA meetings. We don't show up for student council meetings, or for not student council, city council meetings. Like, we don't show up to these stuff. Zoning hearings, we don't show up. So when they drop something in our community, it's like, how the hell did that get here? Oh, there was a meeting 2 years ago that you never went to. So it's like we don't know what's happening.
Second Street and how many people in the middle of the, like, when they started doing it, everybody was like, oh my God, this is terrible and this and that. But it's like I remember when it was happening, I was like, yo, that's going to be a disaster. Somebody like as a whole, people need to go. And by the time they vote on it, it's too late. Once they decide once they start shining them checks.
I don't know if y'all remember or not, when they was putting the incinerator at the dump, like
that whole incinerator shit. I remember that.
Right. Yeah. The white people in what's that outside of Stilton?
Middleton,
Oberlin.
They went ape shit. They were like, you're not burning that over here and letting those fumes come into our neighborhood. And it was like the argument of Harrisburg and Stilton going back and forth about where this incinerator is going. They moved it further into Harrisburg so that it wouldn't have the fumes and the ashes coming into Stilton. And nobody in Harrisburg knew what the hell was going on.
Again, but that goes back to it being like, how are we going to educate ourselves? Because we do have to vote with intention. We have to understand what we're doing. You know what I mean? And then we have to. So why can't we get ourselves, like, why as a collective? And we know there's a lot of difference, but how can we get everyone to get majority on the same page? Again,
we have to care, because it's not like it never happened. Like, that was the whole 60s. That's the 40s, 50s, 60s. That's what was going on when they decided as a collective, you mean not doing this no more? It stopped. I'm watching Eyes on the Prize right now. When they decided as a collective, we're not doing this no more, it stopped. But when they said nobody else shop, it's not different. The difference now is that we're not willing to give up our convenience and our comfort to make something else happen.
The money's different.
It don't matter.
The monster is different, but it's still a monster.
Right.
Yeah. It's just we don't,
like, racism hasn't gone away. It's changed. Like, one thing that we see so much more, and it's always happened, but one thing that's been more prominent now, because you have time on your side, is environmental racism. Oh, we either going to move you, we're going to uproot your neighborhood and run some highways through it, or we're going to put this factory in your neighborhood, and we don't find out till 35, 40 years later that, you know, the waste from the factory is in your water and all your kids. Like, I wouldn't be surprised in 30 years if something pops up with 3 Mile Island. I wouldn't.
Right.
and so it's, or and when you think about how many Black kids have asthma, how many Black kids that live in inner cities have asthma, because there aren't as many, like they always say, there aren't as many green spaces, or hey, we're gonna tear it down and put these high-rise condos in there. We're gonna fuck up your park. Like, I remember being a kid, and at the corner of my street there was a field. They put houses in that field, and that was the field we were playing if we ain't feel like walking up to 4th and Emerald. So it's little things like that where, you know, and especially when you see it as a kid, you're like, oh my God, they took away my play space.
Mm-hmm.
And now, especially as an adult, understanding the importance of grass, of having grass to run on and play on in your neighborhood.
Are y'all seeing it? They put a basketball. You have the basketball court up. They'll take the rims.
Yep.
So
That's true.
so to Shad's initial point, do we care enough to really want to change this? Let me ask y'all something a little bit more deeper than that then. Do we really truly care about finding a solution, or do we just care more about just complaining about the problems?
We have to want to be involved, because like, I know there are times I like at work, I've met with people who are just so exhausted with the fight that
Right.
when
That's what I mean.
Taking the legal avenues and the more tedious avenues, it's like, I can't do this shit no more. And it's encouraging those people, empowering those people, and providing assistance to those people, where once again, I think where you start putting your elected leaders' feet to the fire, because that's what it's about. It's like, nah, this is what we want. This is what our community, we need more green spaces, or we need our basketball courts to have hoops. Maybe put some cameras out there. Like, you know, we want a new playground for our school. We need new playgrounds for our schools with grass in them, because we're tired of our kids scratching their knees up on pieces of broken glass.
Right. So I think that it's not I don't think it's a question of if we want it. I think the problem is it's wanted, but there's too many chiefs in the game. So it's, if you're Tamika Mallory here, and then you have Black Lives Matter here, and then you have the Democratic, say, college kids there, and then the anti this here and the pro this here, instead of combining and having like a meeting and saying, yo, let's make an agenda.
And you guys, this group takes this and that group takes that.
What are our demands?
Go ahead.
Then you pool money and you say, we fight together, and we go to these politicians, and if you want our vote, we need this. And if we don't get this, there's repercussions, and you'll never get our vote again.
One of the things that I get frustrated with, and I'm gonna name 2 people specifically. Like, when Joe Biden got nomination, I remember Ice Cube and Diddy. All of a sudden, they not just getting our vote. Where were you at in the primaries? And then when Ice Cube, I called Kamala's people, they ain't call me back, and he's calling out all these politicians and stuff. But it's like, okay, who did you go to with your platinum plan to decide? And that sounds like a credit card that rips you off. But who'd you go to with your platinum plan, and how'd you come up with it?
And that's the thing, like even him doing that, and then finding out later on down the line your league is funded by a Trump friend. Like, you're not really trying to make this happen. You're being the face that they need you to be as the Black successful Negro, to go out and tell the rest of the Negroes, hey, this dude ain't that bad. That's like,
but Black successful.
Wait a minute, hold on, because we're not supposed to say this as Black people. This N-word they got running for Senate down here is the worst.
Are you talking about Herschel?
I'm talking absolutely about Herschel. The worst of the worst of the worst. There's so many brilliant black minds that I don't agree with, but they are brilliant, that are politicians that you could have pointed at and said, we want you to run for this seat. Y'all find the biggest damn Bama in the state of Georgia to come run up against this other black man because you knew if you found a white person, you wouldn't beat him because he beat out your white people. So you got to find somebody black, somebody popular, somebody that's an athlete and say, hey, you put on a suit and you're going to come be this. And now you're down here. They got Run Herschel Run signs all through Atlanta. And it's like, you're looking at them like, well, I know the history of run, blank, run, and then it's not Herschel in the middle. It's an N-word. Right. And you let that be your slogan for your campaign because you don't know any better. You're better off calling OJ and saying, hey, OJ, go run for Senate in California. Like, it's a slap in the face. There's so many people that you could have tapped and said, we want you to go do this.
Well, no, he has CTE. He does have a folklore, and like you said, he's goofy enough that does allow them to do that. But they did also say that during his time at Georgia, because he is a folklore figure, but he is goofy enough to also believe that they really wanted him for him instead of you know what I mean? Like you said, like we all know from the outside that it's for that purpose, but he's goofy enough with that CTE because he was also in that MMA stuff too, and he had to stop that. You know what I mean? But we know
that's
that
what I mean. It's the level of disingenuous disrespect.
Doesn't surprise you?
Nah, it honestly that did surprise me.
No,
but I'm gonna tell you why. Because
it started when McCain put Sarah Palin on because it was Hillary was one. We're gonna get a woman. And then we had, and it carried over. So, because again, Republicans, they are playing the long game of, we just need this number of people. We're going to tell Herschel what to do. We got to get him in there, but we're going to tell Herschel what to do.
This goofy said on stage and said, they want to talk to you about CTR. What is CTR? Critical race theory. What is that even? I was like, you even want to say it backwards on stage in public? You say it backwards. He on a damn debate. This dude pulls out a Cracker Jack badge and says, "I'm a sheriff." But you're an honorary. You got an honorary badge 2 weeks ago, and you're trying to justify that for you was telling somebody that you're in law enforcement years ago. You could have found anybody else. You could have found a person flipping the chicken at Popeyes and you would have a better damn candidate. The fact you pull this N-word and put him on the platform to represent black people in the blackest damn city in the South, that is disrespectful.
It goes to show you that the strategy and what they believe, how they understand the people that they're targeting will follow.
The white people. I love Herschel. Herschel is
exactly
great.
Because he carries a folklore. Herschel. And my thing is that for us, back to like that key thing that you were saying, during the civil rights times, how can we get all of us on that same plane? How do we get ourselves, like you said, like, because even in civil rights times, you had different leaders that were believing in different things, but how do you get everybody to come together for the common cause?
I don't think
that's because, like you said, in civil rights, we had Martin. Like you said, all our leaders were gunned down, but they had different.
You know why?
Go ahead.
Because they understood what they had to lose. We feel like we got money now, and it don't matter. Like, as long as you don't touch my money, it don't matter. You're not realizing what you're getting ready to lose. So until you put into perspective what your losses are going to be, and then you're fighting from behind the 8 ball because it's already happening. Like Clarence Thomas and them over there blocking every damn thing. He's like, affirmative action, no sir, take it away.
Hey.
No sir, take it away. You want what? Voting rights? No sir, take it away. And it's like, oh, we passed the lynching bill. Ain't no niggas getting lynched now. Like, who's lynching? Now you're trying to say, oh, this is what lynching is at this point. AKA, if your black ass gets into a fight with one of our white kids, we're going to say that you are now lynching them based on how the fight went. So if you choke somebody out, because they came after you. Now you're fighting a Fed charge for lynching. It's just, we think that bills are being passed to protect us, and all they're doing is putting the bills in our faces so that when we violate them, you're now going to jail under that bill.
So what's the resolution? What's the end game for us starting right now? If each one of you, let me ask you each individual here, what would you do if you had the power to change the narrative and go get this thing corrected? How would you approach that? We'll start with Boog since he's down there just cooling out. And the rest of us been talking. Look at him. How would you approach this, Boog?
We're gonna start making you take them damn sunglasses off for these shows.
You mean far as like you talk about just state legislation? You mean in general?
Okay, so we're gonna come back to Bugs. So then, no, we're talking about like just in general, like in its totality. What's a plan of action? Like, what's something that you would really want to see us get? Like, how would you recommend we go about voting, getting these things going in the right direction for us in its totality? Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you want to start with local, state, like just in general. What do you feel we need to do to get things done? How would you roll out a plan? What's your plan? What's your perfect idea?
Want to see rather. I think start from scratch. I'm gonna go there. If I had that power, that would be.
Go back to Africa?
No, listen. I mean, as far as them, all these ones that's been sitting in these seats at Pelosi's and
Scratch
so on,
them.
30 years, 40 years, that's entirely too long. It should either be a time limit on which you can serve in one of those positions,
20 years,
and just move on, and then that'd be it.
20.
Not this permanent residency of just being here. You see what I'm saying? That would be one of the number one things that I can change.
Let me add on what Boog's saying.
Go ahead.
Nah, you got your own time. Let him do it.
Because I don't want to repeat what he said.
Go ahead.
I don't want to repeat what he said. Because the problem is you get people in the offices, and then once you're in there, all you're doing is focusing on staying. As long as I do this, I can stay. As long as I keep making this money, I can stay. As long as I vote this way, I can stay. You're no longer doing what's best for people. So it's either you do what you know is right or you stay. And most people are more concerned with staying than doing their job. Exactly. And it's either I'm not going to vote, I'm going to vote the way that I think is going to save me in election time, which is why even like you put bills up and they're like, oh, we're not voting on that until after the election. No, this shit need to be done now. How are you going to wait until after everybody's voted in to say, oh, this is what we're going to do later? All right, I'm done.
But that would be one of the first things I do. And then holding other these groups accountable. Don't start something and stop it. Like, I don't even want to talk about Black Lives Matter right now because that's a whole nother ball game.
They piss me off from day two.
Pissed when I start talking about it. Because I don't never
piss me off from day two.
But like I'm saying, starting things, sticking with it, and I'm gonna stick with the same word I said earlier. It's about perpetuation. Keep it going and keep passing it down. Keep educating the next. Then you educate the next. Then it'll be the domino effect. And just get something, stand with it, and make it perpetual and ongoing instead of a spark today and then not heard of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm done.
For me, it's educating people about the political process and also history, because one of the things that I think sometimes when discussing, particularly Trump coming through with white people, having that discussion with white people, is the language. Definitely education in history. Also educating people on policy, not being afraid to answer questions. And I think as a collective, not being afraid to step out, because one of the things, like, I like Bernie, but I always heard a lot of older Black people say, oh my God, it's so pie in the sky. And it's just like, but that's a possibility. And I think sometimes as a collective, because we've been in survival mode for so long, we are afraid to dream and to follow through with that dream. We know what could be, but we are afraid to step into what could be, to push for what could be, because we know there's going to be backlash. We got Donald Trump because there was Barack Obama, and by was Barack Obama some extreme leftist, super duper progressive, but the existence of a Black person in the most powerful position. And as long as it was Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell, rest in peace, it was no problem. But once Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and Sasha Malia Obama in that beacon, it was, oh shit. So we got
As long as you worked there and didn't live there, you were cool.
exactly. Right. And so, or as long as you was like, I don't know if y'all watched Scandal, as long as like Cyrus Bean understood that he was never going to be president because he was a gay man and he was short and he had all these things against him, which is why he used his position to manipulate Fitz. But we know, I mean, we've had enough extreme for a long time. That's, white supremacy and racism is built into the fabric of America. So I think it's re-energizing people again, the way we were energized when Obama was running, because that is, I will never ever forget, like that was a time that was joyous. It was getting people involved and then having the follow through.
So I criticized Obama and I wrote letters to the White House, and I'm sure I'm probably somewhere in the FBI database right now. And it's because I understand I voted for you, but when you do something that I morally disagree with, it's our obligation as voters to say something. And whether you read that letter or not, I did my part in making sure I sent it out to you. When he started using drones in Syria, and I saw like the aftermath of what was happening and realizing y'all don't even know what the hell you're hitting. Y'all just dropping numerous bombs every day in the same area, killing whoever it kills. You can't sit back and not say something. And even with my local politicians, I have Warnock's email in my phone. You might not respond. I mean, he did when I needed my passport, but that's a different story. It's you have to get involved. And in the same breath, understanding I'm not voting blue the whole way down a ticket. You're not getting a free vote from me. Like, that's not happening, because I understand that two things can be correct at the same time. Like, I can be all for gun rights, as Bugs know, all for it. But in the same breath say, with this one, maybe I need to have a little more regulation on it. Not necessarily ban it, don't necessarily take it, but regulations on it. I can't go and drive my car if I don't renew my registration every year. So maybe you need to renew your registration saying you still have that gun. Maybe you need to get some kind of a certification saying you know how to properly use it. Maybe you need to make sure that you have everything that's there to lock it up and that it's insured. So if something were to happen with that specific gun, you're held liable. Cool. Two things can be correct at the same time. I think we get in this area where it's like, oh, I'm only agreeing with them because they're not racist. Talking about Democrats. And like Bub said, the difference is they're not telling you they're racist. They're not showing you racist policies. But when you keep people in systems that don't allow them to get out of it, and if you try to break out of it, you're penalized for it. That's the same kind of racism. It's just a different type. It's like we talked about abuse. It's a different type of racism. So there's blatant, and then there's systemic. And they're playing on different fields. So yeah, this dude may not like me, but he's not doing this that you're doing. And you may not agree with me on this thing, but you're not doing what that dude's doing. I run independent the whole way down the ticket. If I think that you're great in this position, cool. The little girl running for Secretary of State, I don't know you. You're like 13. Why would I vote for you? You have no idea what you're doing.
You know what?
I'm not a Rathensberger fan. But the fact that you was like, nah, bro, I'm not doing that. I can respect that. And you did some other shit in the past that I don't appreciate. But I know if it comes back down to this line, I can trust you a little bit more than this other person. This little girl gonna fold. The moment them dudes run up on one of them polling stations, she gonna run that way. I need people that have shown me something that I can trust, but in the same breath, you're doing your job. Love Biden to death. He don't need to run again.
Not at all.
But the problem you're going to run into, y'all haven't set up a hierarchy for somebody else to step into place. So we don't even know who the next person would be. When they pop up, it's like, who you? On the Republican side, there's a whole list of people. And they're like, who's the next one? Is it going to be Ted Cruz? Is it going to be, what's his name? The dude down in Florida? Is it going to be the governor in Texas?
DeSantis.
That's what I'm saying. You set up a litany of people and put them all in place that if you tap any of them, it's like, okay, I can rock with you. We've seen you. Who they gonna give us? Cory Booker? Come on, Cory.
Come on. I think like to your point, I think we got to start. You know, they always say you don't ever want to talk about religion and politics, but I think this is honestly something that we need to start talking more about. I think like we had to start talking to our kids about it earlier, because I think education, like we always think about it in the traditional sense of an institution of schooling, but education a lot of times is also just experience and conversation, you know. And I think like if you start teaching your kids and showing them these things early about, hey, like tail drops this weekend, for instance, I explained to my 9-year-old what really took place, and I was like, and I had some kickback at first from someone about it, and I was like, you got to understand, my dad was born in 52. I said, this was day one from them. I said, so teaching it to somebody at 9 isn't going to be any different for someone who had to learn it from birth. So I think that we have to stop excusing the fact that kids are kids and start educating them on the proper things in order to get the change that we want. And I think that these are conversations that we got to start having. Just as much as we have Super Bowl parties, just as much as we have, you know what I mean, children reveal parties. We have to start putting our energy into a lot of these things. And it's us as a collective. And I say us, that means me as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like we had to really start doing it, just having the conversation. We have so much stuff available on the internet. I'm sure there's probably some politics stuff for kids. There's always like at least like 10 different available options. Like if we don't understand it, we can start on the same level, just trying to understand it from the basic level as a child. And I think
Schoolhouse Rock did it.
Right. You know what I mean? Like if you can do what was the thing that taught people basic Spanish? The tape. What was it?
Rosetta Stone.
You know what I mean? You got to start somewhere. Don't be so prideful that you think that you just have to go to your next representative. Like, no, go do some research. Teach your kids along the same lines. So then they'll be further along because they still have time to grow older, and they'll be either more experienced going forward. I think we just got to start having these conversations as a community, and I think that's just going to help us in every aspect of it. That's all I really got to say about it. Like,
I think especially now, seeing how people were doing this whole debate thing and talking about, I'm not debating them because I'm not giving them a platform. Nah, dude, you running for office. That ain't for that other person. That's so that we can see who you are and we can hear you answer these questions.
Right.
Like be confronted with something that you may or may not agree with, and how do you answer it? And then let us choose. Like you shouldn't even have a choice on doing debates. You should have to do at least 3 of them. There shouldn't even be an option.
I
don't know, because I watched Fetterman the other day, and that stroke thing,
but
it was hard.
And okay. So real quick, can I get on that? So the Fetterman situation, it's like dude had a stroke, got it, which means like your speech pattern is messed up. Right. How his brain works and how his writing abilities go, that's not affected. So now you're looking at it and saying, oh, he's having a cognitive problem with his speech. He can't think properly. That's not accurate. And now they're running with that and making it seem like you're not fit for office. There's a whole bunch of dumb motherfuckers in offices across the country that didn't have a stroke.
What they're playing on is the fact that he said he won't release his
medical records.
That's the key thing, because they asked that, and he's saying all he kept saying was that his doctor said he could do it, and I get it. And I'm like I said, I'm not gonna fool with Oz, because I know, like you said,
he's a pawn,
right?
Yeah, Oz ain't even a Republican for real.
He's a pawn.
Exactly.
And even that's pissing me off too. Oprah ain't saying shit, and it's really making me mad. You validated this man.
Does that surprise you?
Spotlight.
Does that surprise you?
Yes.
No, it shouldn't.
Because to be quiet, it surprises me because of how important this seat is. I'm surprised somebody from the Obama house didn't call her and be like, yo, you don't necessarily have to endorse anyone, but what are your thoughts? Like, why are y'all not cool? It's like there's a conversation and you're letting pretty much the power of the Senate lie in the hands of a person because they keep that seat and then they gain another one. Republicans got control. Yeah. And it's not so far-fetched. It's just
but it's stuff like that I think we need to educate our community on, because there was an article released like last week and I was able to glance through it, and they specifically interviewed Black conservatives in Georgia, and they were talking about obviously Herschel Walker versus Reverend Warnock. And one of the things that they said is, and this is after the whole Herschel done paid for 800 abortions, he's been a terrible father, all of this stuff. And they're like, well, even though he's a Christian and there's some questions about that, it's about having that extra seat in the Senate. So
that's
we
all
have
they want.
Power. And again, we have to get our people to understand that. That's what we have to get people to understand. There's so many levels to it. It's not just about saying like one of the things that I love about AOC is that she is always on live chopping up some vegetables and telling people about what's going on. This
is what's happening. Even if you don't agree with her stances, like she's talking to people and like this is what's going on.
Her and the other three, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Pressley. And I said that's one of the things that I love about those women, and it because they're breaking
the squad.
Yeah, the squad. Like, and I said, and people don't like them, but I said also I appreciate energy. Whatever they go hard for, they go hard for, and that's the thing that Republicans do. They is like, yo, listen, this is what we said. And one of my frustrations with some of the older Democrats is that, like, hey, these are your people. Republicans got people lined up. With the older Democrats, it's like, hey, these are your people. You need to start propping them up. You need to start pushing them up. You might not always agree, but they understand what's going to go on in the world in the next 50 years.
They got the movement. So my last thing, I think what we need to do is community-wise start running for offices and start running for school boards and start running for city councils and start running for county commissioners, and start running for tax adjusters and start putting people in place in those areas. Even the same way I said, people are like, what do you do about police corruption? It's like the only thing that you can do is join the police force. Like if you're not a part of it, how do you correct it? So if you're not a part of politics, how do you correct it? And it's not necessarily hard to go in and say, this is what my neighborhood needs. At city council is basically, this is what my neighborhood needs. Like this money that you're allocating over here, it's not needed over there. It's needed over here. So redistribute that this way. That thing y'all asking for, that's not important. The Civil War Museum, nobody gives a shit. And you spend so much money on that fucking museum that nobody goes to.
And you're down the road from Gettysburg.
Just go to Gettysburg.
Right.
But they got it there because the mayor at the time wanted some artifacts. And it was like, my private collection is going to go in there and you're going to pay me to give you my private collection to go in here. And they paid him for his private collection to go into a museum that nobody fucking goes to. And it's like, that's the kind of things that we need to make sure that we're involved in. And you've had people do it. Had some mayors in Harrisburg that didn't really do too well. But it's like,
when you think about artifacts, though, so for instance, Camp Curtin Mitchell Memorial, that's been since the Civil War. Uptown was a Civil War camp. I would have rather cornered money into that. That building's for sale. And that's a historic building. We went in that building, went upstairs. I saw an early copy of Uncle Tom's Cabin. And those are the things that I would have rather them put money into an actual neighborhood that was a Civil War camp. And you could, and again, that also generates money for the neighborhood. Hey, here's a walk that you can do. Here's a stop here. Here's a stop here, versus something that sits on a hill that took away, again, green space for local kids.
There's no way you should be able to ignore Uptown Harrisburg from Division Street
to Maclay.
from
Yep.
7th Street to 4th. There's no way you should be able to do that. And that entire area is just ignored. It's
Well, they have the federal courthouse, so, and also
to put niggas in jail.
right, and also
Right.
people are the postcards to
They
tell
making it a short walk to the courthouse.
that's a perk walk. You got to do a perk walk down 6th Street. But,
Yep, there you go.
yeah, but like even things like, for example, was a couple summers ago where like the pools didn't open until damn near August. But you remember, like we was there the first day the pool was open. You see a whole bunch
Memorial
of
Day.
walk down 6th Street to go to Jackson Lit.
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. And so I think it's getting involved and like you said, because we always know what's wrong. Ain't nobody doing this, ain't nobody doing that. And I think some of it too is not getting into the popularity contest. Because it's like, oh, this person's outspoken. Well, they could talk a good game. And I'll say this. We had a whole bunch of people that we knew that were running the school district. And next thing you know, we're in state receivership. And all of these things are coming out in the paper where a lot of people were overpaid and a lot of money went missing.
Again, but that goes into knowledge, and again, it goes all the way back to we have to get more involved,
And
start respecting, and start we gotta really just not put our head down and be complaining. We have to get involved, get active, educate. And it takes a lot. We got to get involved with this as much as we get involved in our team sports and our pride about the school. If you really want pride about the school, take pride in the academics, not just the athletics. You know what I mean? Like straight up, like that's what it is. So we gotta get ready to wrap it a few because we've been on for a minute. Go ahead, Mo. Everybody got some clothes and stuff. Go ahead.
I closed already.
Kids are involved in, and not just sports, because I always see people, well, these kids don't want to play sports. A lot of motherfuckers didn't want to play sports, but we also had science clubs. We had band, and everybody's like, oh, band. But I was like, if kids aren't in stuff, like I always tell people, if kids aren't in stuff by the time they're in middle school, they're not going to be in anything. So when you say, well, we're only offering it 8th grade and up, it's like these kids at that point, they're far gone.
Right.
True.
They outside.
And I think now some of that is up to the parents to demand.
It is. So make sure you educate yourself. We want better for our people. Make sure you do better for our people. And our people, we love you. So just want better for yourself. Make sure you do it. So.
All right, people. Do your research. Get out. Do your part. Be active. Y'all take care of so many other places you could have been on a Friday night. You decided to be here with the Q. We appreciate y'all for rocking with us.
Why you look like a tired editor, man?
Because
I
saw that inhaling and exhaling he was doing
y'all
on
be
the show.
happy, be safe, but most of all, be you. Q out.
He probably can't feel his toes.